Hello and welcome to the latest episode of TOKI Talk. I am your host and Mayor Pro-Tempore Russell Berner. Joining me today is Samantha Siegel. She is the Angel Oak Preserve Director at the Low Country Land Trust. So, Samantha, I can't tell you how excited I am that you are here today to speak about how the Angel Oak is going to be preserved and the recreation and park facility that is going to be constructed there.
Thank you so much for having me. I couldn't be more excited to be in this part of the Angel Oak's life.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear it. And as I was joking in the preamble, feel free just to run with any answers that come into your mind. We have no time limit, so the audience just wants to hear everything they can about this. So before we get into the new park is going to be developed, can you tell me a history about the Angel Oak?
Sure. So the Angel Oak has an amazing history that is sort of just being discovered. There are things that we have read about the tree and folklore, but no one's ever really done a deep dive into the history of the plantation that was once there. Before that, it was an indigenous ceremonial space. And after that, it was a really amazing spot during the civil rights movement. So much happened there. And there were sharecroppers that worked on the property after the Civil War. Pretty much every era of history, when you tell the story of the Angel Oak, you also are telling the story of Johns Island. So it's really amazing to see. And I always say that when you talk about any environmental issue, you think of humans as the bad guys usually in the story. And in this case, there have been some bad guys in the life of the Angel Oak, but mostly it's humans who have protected it. So it's pretty amazing, too, that, we don't know the actual age of the tree, but, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, people were working to protect it the same way that we are now. So what an amazing gift to give to the future generations.
So, of course, I've been to your current facility to see the tree, and it is truly an amazing sight. But while I understand that you cannot exactly describe or quantify its age, it has to be at least hundreds of years old. Do you have a ballpark of where it is?
Yeah, so, we try not to speculate on the age, but we do know there's a couple sources from the past. One of them is not the greatest source. It's a Post and Courier article. I wish that there were better records kept, but there is a Post and Courier article from right after Hurricane Hugo where one of the big limbs blew off, and they did drill into that limb to test the age. And according to the Post and Courier, that is where the 1,000-year-old number came from, that 1,000 years old. In more recent history, the city has said more like 300 to 500. Whatever its age is, it's an ancient tree. And we know that it was here before Europeans ever stepped foot on this continent. So we are certain of that. But in order to actually determine the age of the tree, you would have to drill into it, which we would never let happen. And even if we did, since it's such an old tree, it's mostly hollow inside, so you wouldn't get an accurate reading anyways. So I like to think of it as part of the mystery of the Angel Oak.
That's quite a nice way of putting it. So part of the history, though, that I did want to bring up is it's my understanding Septima Clark had some involvement with the tree. So can you expand on that a little?
Yes. Septima Clark, one of my personal heroes, the mother of the movement. She was given that nickname from Martin Luther King Jr. And she is a civil rights activist that a lot of South Carolinians know of. But when I bring her up in other states, people don't know who she is. And it blows my mind because everyone knows who Rosa Parks is, right? And Septima was Rosa Parks' teacher. And Rosa Parks credits Septima Clark with not giving up her seat on that bus. So she was just amazing. And she was a teacher on Johns Island in the early 1900s. So we were able to uncover an amazing oral history. It's about a 30-minute interview that was done at the Angel Oak, where she talks about the history of the tree, the history of transportation, education, all kinds of things on Johns Island. And the most memorable quote from that interview is she says that it was the height of segregation, and the Angel Oak was the only place that wasn't segregated, which still gives me goosebumps every time I talk about that. And to hear it in her own words is just amazing. And that clip is online on the Low Country Digital Library. I can share a link after the podcast. So
that's a great idea. Is it, I'm curious, is that going to be a part of the presentation or so at the new facility at Angel Oak?
Oh, absolutely. Everything in the preserve is created with such intention, and every feature tells a story, which is part of what is just so amazing about this project. It's not just a nature preserve. It's more like an outdoor museum, like a living museum of what the Sea Islands represent. So it just gives us this opportunity to teach folks in a different way and in that outdoor setting. And one of my favorite parts of the new plan is the nature play area. So when I say nature play area, I really mean nature play area, not plastic playground equipment. This will be a space for folks to learn, also climb and play. We will have a recreated synthetic limb of the Angel Oak for for kids to climb. I say kids, but I'll probably be climbing on it too. And there's a story that Septima Clark told during that history. It's a sort of a folk tale about how the Angel Oak's limbs spread out. And I love this story. And while it's probably not true, we wanted to honor it in the preserve. And that was that the Angel Oak has always been this gathering place for the community, and folks would often bring their lunch and, have their lunch under the tree. And the main form of transportation at that time was ox carts. So someone had tied an oxen to a limb of the tree, and the story was the oxen got spooked and took off and pulled the limb out. So that was why the limb was spreading all this way. So in the children's play area, there will be a little ox cart and little, oxen for kids to climb on. And so they're going to learn that story while they're playing in the nature play area.
All right, so promise me the next time I go there with my family, you're my personal tour guide.
Oh, absolutely.
You have so much knowledge about this facility.
Absolutely.
So the land must be permanently preserved at this point in time?
Yes.
All right, so that must have been through the land trust then?
Yes.
Is something you can expand on how that took place?
So, there's so many parts that are so special about this project. But the story of how we acquired the land is just an amazing story. It's sort of a David versus Goliath story. A developer had come in and gotten almost all of his permits. He had gotten final approval from Charleston City Council to put up over 600 homes and over 40,000 square feet of retail space, all squeezed into 42 acres of environmentally fragile land surrounding the Angel Oak. So you can imagine the public was not too excited about that.
Thankfully.
Thankfully. It went through with very little opposition, and it was sort of pushed through quietly. There was a small newspaper article in the back of the Post and Courier one day, and the Angel Oak had just become my happy place. I say the Angel Oak saved my life, and so I wanted to save her life too. So we quickly gathered as a community. We started an online petition, which just went crazy. And I think in the first 2 weeks, there were 10,000 signatures.
Wow.
So we just gathered and we created a community group. We partnered with local nonprofits, the Coastal Conservation League, lots of others. And we started a campaign to save our giant friend. And it took almost a decade, which is also remarkable that local citizens stayed the course. Normally in these types of campaigns, you get all excited and it's, a couple months and
Then
you
it
go
dies
out,
out.
save the tree, and then you're like, okay, it's over. But nobody gave up. They stayed the course. So we were able to eventually take the developer to court over a wetland permit. So now we call the wetlands on the site the wetlands that saved the angel oak. And we won. So the Low Country Land Trust was able to raise millions of dollars in a very short amount of time to purchase that land and permanently protect it. So it was really, really amazing. The community, it's such a great community story. And there were so many people that worked together that wouldn't normally work together. And we coined that the angel oak effect, that it's this, this model for conservation where we don't have to agree on everything, but if we can agree on this one thing, we can make a really positive change.
So they all have the love that is just exuding out of you for this poor. Where did the name Angel Oak come from?
That is a wonderful question. So there's two answers. Officially, and most likely, the name came from the family that lived there, was named the Angel family. They owned a plantation, and in the early 1800s, it became known as the Angel Plantation. So I like Septima Clark's version better because it doesn't come from the name of a family that enslaved people. But Septima Clark said, in the Gullah tradition, there are people who are born with what is called a call, and those people can see spirits. And she believed that the people who saw the spirits around the tree from killings that happened during slavery time, there's no evidence that the tree was used as there's stories about it being a hanging tree. There's no evidence of that, but we also can't dispute it. It's a big live oak tree in South Carolina, so that very well could have happened. But Septima Clark saw it more as a protection, as the spirits around the tree were protecting her, and that's why she called it the angel oak. And when she was asked if she knew of the angel family, she had never heard of them.
Wow,
so I thought that was really interesting.
I like that answer a lot better.
Me too.
So let's talk about the park or the facility that's going to be created. First of all, how many people about visit the facility, Angel Oak, every year?
Yeah, about 400,000 people visit a year,
That's
which
a ton.
is a ton. It has grown so much. I would say, I think back to 2008 when we first started the Save the Angel Oak initiative, and I could be sitting at that tree for hours and not see another human. And now it is just really, really busy, which is a good thing and a bad thing. It's great that more people get to experience the tree, but we really have to be careful about how we manage that many people on the site at one time.
So right now, the tree is surrounded by a chain link fence. I'm sure that's not going to be what ultimately is provided when you're done with this new with this new project. But can you? There are some renderings that will show up online, but can you verbally describe what the facility is going to look like?
Yeah, sure. It's going to be amazing.
Of course. If you're involved, it has to be amazing.
So the main problem that we were trying to solve is parking. Believe it or not, this whole project was born out of the need for a parking lot. Currently, there's a really small handicap lot right next to the tree. It sits right on top of the roots of the tree, and there's the little gift shop that also sits right on top of the roots of the tree. And we wanted to move that, get it off the roots of the tree, and people just park along Angel Oak Road. And on a Saturday, it's all the way down the road. So you can imagine the safety hazards. The adjacent property owners can't even get out of their driveway. It's just a mess. So finding a safe parking area for the Angel Oak was our first priority. So the first thing we decided to do is start the process of closing Angel Oak Road to vehicular traffic. So it will still be open, and this is not for another year or so that this will happen, but it will still be open to pedestrians and bikes and the local residents who live there. Obviously, it will be accessible by fire truck and police cars. We want to make sure fire trucks can get there, God forbid.
First priority.
Yes. But that will create such a more natural feel as you visit the tree. You won't see cars in the background. You won't see the dust from cars. And more importantly, cars won't be driving along the root system. So when you enter the preserve, you'll enter off Bohicket Road instead of turning down Angel Oak Road. And you'll enter into a forested drive in a very forested parking lot with proximity to the children's play area so that kids or parents can go back to their vehicles and get a diaper or lunch or whatever the kid might need. And then you sort of enter this, we call it the Ridge Trail, which will take you to the Angel Oak. So it'll be about a 5-minute walk from the parking lot to the Angel Oak, but that's actually another opportunity to teach people about how massive the root structure of the Angel Oak is. We only see the tree above ground.
Right.
And so, and part of the interpretive work that we're doing is to create images and graphics that show that root system and how extensive it is. So you know when you're entering the Angel Oak root system that it's a sacred space and to be careful.
Wonderful.
So so there will be a network of trails, about 2 miles of trails. Most all of them will be ADA accessible. Everything to get to the tree will be ADA accessible. There will be a couple secondary trails, just extra trails for folks. And then you will go down this ridge trail, and then there's what we're calling a commemorative walk. It is the old entrance to the plantation. And during our archaeology research, we found the remnants of 3 enslaved workers' cabins on the property, which was really powerful to stand in the spot where these dwellings were and to see how close these people lived to the Angel Oak. So we obviously aren't going to recreate those cabins, but we are going to honor them and put a marker there and tell the story of the people that were enslaved there, down to the names of the people. And we've even been able to find some descendants of the people that were enslaved.
What a great
there.
tribute.
Yes, really amazing. And when you see their names, it just makes it so much more real. And then we've even been able to find, stories. Like there was a boy named Billy who he escaped from the plantation. And there's a, runaway advertisement that was found in the paper. And he managed to stay free for a couple of months. And he was unfortunately captured again and sold to a plantation on James Island. But just, being able to know that his name was Billy and being able to have information about his story is just, another layer of Johns Island history that I don't think is really interpreted anywhere. So it's exciting to be able to tell some of those less told stories.
I like the concept of honoring this Billy and other people who live there. It's a worthy exercise.
Yes,
I like it a lot.
Yeah.
So if anybody is interested in donating,
yes,
can you?
Please do.
Well, let's give them the way to do it.
Yes. You can go to angeloakpreserve.org. And we are accepting donations.
Well, Samantha, thank you so much for joining us today. I know I learned a whole lot about Angel Oak, and I'm sure our viewers have as well. And the wonderful history of Angel Oak, I'm so happy, is going to be preserved and told for future generations to come. So this concludes another episode of TOKI Talk. As always, we encourage you to sign up for our weekly town e-blasts, to follow us on social media, and always to participate or even watch our town meeting. And thank you so much for watching today, and stay tuned for more podcasts to come.